WSKID, Skid Row Radio.
You're listening to radio station WSKID.
Hi, so I guess first some house cleaning before I get into the meat of this video. In the last video that I did, I talked about some kind of the personal aspects of the communications I've had with this guy, DLandonCole. I've been told by some neutral people, you know, best to leave aside the personal kind of aspects of it. I guess should have made clearer why I talked about those things. First of all, the reason this guy says he's not interacting with me anymore in debates is down to a personal dislike, and he's gone at great pains to list the kind of reasons that he finds my character distasteful. The things that I talked about with his character pertain to, you know, his behaviour during debates and this kind of thing, the things he said. It was all referenced specifically to either political statements he's made or interactions that I've directly had with him. So I didn't go off topic. There was no ad hominems, there was no insults. I didn't call him a numpty. You know, I wasn't arrogant about his and dismissed his positions, nothing like that. They were all specifically referencing either political statements he's made or interactions I've had with him. And this was, again, down to the fact that he's been refusing to engage with me and blaming that on some kind of personal dislike. You also put out a video, Landon, asking your audience, am I a bigoted, hypocritical liar? Okay, so, and you went to great pains to script this very sincere-sounding video in which you were asking your audience to assess your character. Okay, so which is it? You can't have it both ways. Either you were genuinely looking for a critique of your character, or you were being dishonest and manipulative with that video. Which is it? You can't have it both ways. So the video response that I finally got from you addressed not a single point that I brought up with regards to the debate that was being going on. You basically just threw your dummy out of the pram and said, I'm done with this, even though you haven't really started with this in terms with me with this debate. I'm done with this because he's attacking my personal character. Again, specifically referencing things you've said and interactions we've had. And after you requested an assessment of your character. But, you know, even all that aside, you can't just throw it all out on the basis of there having been criticism of your character. You have to demonstrate where that criticism has either been fallacious or superfluous. Okay, just the fact that it exists is not enough for you to say I'm not doing this anymore. So that's ridiculous. And you say, oh, I can't handle this. You seem so distressed by the fact that this one person is daring to critique your character, as well as, you know, in conjunction with the actual debate we're having, by the way. Yeah, I mean, this is YouTube. Look around you. Is this really what happens? Do we really just all stick to, you know, doggedly to the debate topics and the arguments made? Are there no assessments of character going on? Why are you immune to that, Landon? I mean, you've done it yourself routinely in People Against Thunderfoot, Pat Condell. You don't just talk about their arguments, you do talk about their character as well. Why are you immune to criticism of that type? But it's all kind of ridiculous. But it was really funny because the response that I got was that what Landon did was to write a script up and give it to FederalistFilms to read out, like some kind of official state address. I've not really seen this done before, other than when John Dawn gave scripts to a guy called Kenny, and that was parody. Okay, so it was ridiculous. I mean, ask yourself, please, though. I mean, this is kind of a cult of personality problem that is going on here, so I don't have any real chance of swaying anybody on this aspect of things, because if you like Landon better, if you like me Landon better, your mind's already made up, you're not going to be changed. But please at least consider this. If I had given a statement to iMythPer to read out on her channel all about why DLandonCole sucks, right, you would laugh me off of YouTube. Further than that, if after having given a script to iMythPer to read out about why DLandonCole sucks, I then made a video on my backup channel talking about why DLandonCole sucks at the exact same time, after having already viewed the video that iMythPer made, reading out my statement about why DLandonCole sucks, you would laugh me off of YouTube. If in that video on my backup channel talking about why DLandonCole sucks, I also pointed out that I didn't feel up to talking about why DLandonCole sucks, whilst referencing the video I got my friend to make about why DLandonCole sucks, you would laugh me off of YouTube. Okay, this was ridiculous. Your presentation, your demeanour does wonders to hide what's really going on here. So Landon, either you're full of shit or you're going to have to get a thicker skin, alright? One person criticising your character with the context provided as I've described it's not good enough for you to have this reaction to it, okay? You gave as good as you got, okay? It's been in level playing field. You've initiated contact with me several times. You're the first one to mention me in videos this week. You've been tweeting arrogantly and insulting me there, right? You gave as good as you got, okay? So don't make out like I've been harassing you, Landon. That's really unfair. Try living through something like Transgate and then come back to me and tell me that it's stressful. But all of that is quite superfluous, so I'll leave that aside. There's so much more I can say about that, but I really don't want to spend too much time on it. I spent too much time on it already. But yeah, FederalistFilms asked me a few questions with regards to if I could identify some positive things about NATO and trying to basically see the argument from the other side. That actually deserves a whole video to itself, and I will do that at some point because I want to focus this video on Landon's new Wikileaks video. So last night I recorded a video with my reaction to the latest occurrence with Wikileaks that Landon covered in his new video, which was that they've released the entire set of 251,000 US cables unredacted. And this was a pretty shocking thing to happen. I made a video condemning it, and I tweeted out condemning it as well, and I'll show the tweets. And they also did, before this, they did a poll to their followers on Twitter asking people whether they should or not, basically. And I tweeted twice 2 reasons why they should not do it. Again, I'll show them here. So I was against this decision to start with. I was against it afterwards as well. I made a video in which I condemned it, and I'll show you a clip now. I do not approve or support this release of all of the unredacted cables. I think it was a ridiculous thing to do. So I looked a bit rough in that last night. I'd been drinking, but yes, after I didn't put it up in the end because I'd then watched a FederalistFilms video, and there were some things in there that I felt like I wanted to address, and the questions I wanted to answer about NATO, which I've since decided to put into a separate video entirely. But I'm glad that I didn't post that video last night, because after that I did a lot of reading, a lot of research, and I've come to a completely different understanding of this situation. And Landon's video was utterly misrepresenting what happened, unsurprisingly. It was a reactionary video, in my opinion, and dishonest, because you left out some very significant factors that have been reported on even by anti-WikiLeaks media sources. Everywhere that is reporting on this is reporting on a couple of factors that you left out entirely, and that was that the data and the passwords to access that data were already out there and have been out there for months, okay? You talk about potential harm coming to informants, to activists, to people talking to diplomats, right? Yes. From who? From malevolent states, okay? That are the biggest threat to people that are talking to diplomats here, okay? Now, those states have intelligence agencies, okay? They have tech-savvy people constantly looking for information on people that are talking about them. So the data and the password for this data to access it was already out there as a result of the actions of 2 non-WikiLeaks people, okay? Daniel Domscheit-Berg, an ex-employee who left, and David Lee of The Guardian, right? And what happened was, and this is a context that you left out from your video, Landon. You painted it entirely that WikiLeaks had just decided to put all this out into the open for no fucking reason. And it was completely, you know, just a reckless thing to do. Yeah, right? I actually was on your side of this when I first heard about this, and I was very confused. You can see the clip that I made from video last night. I've since read into it a lot more. It's a totally different picture to what you painted it, and let me try and explain to you. And people listening to this, can you please try and remove from this explanation of events what you think of me, okay? What you think my you know, bias is, or he's just a WikiLeaks shill and all this business, right? Personally, yeah, Julian Assange's character is questionable in several different ways. You know, I've said that he should be sharing the burden of responsibility for representation and decision making. I've said that he shouldn't have been putting his face on T-shirts while he's still got a sexual assault charge hanging over his head, right? So yeah, there's problems with his character, definitely. And I couldn't give a fuck if WikiLeaks folded tomorrow. I've said that several times. As long as someone is doing this, okay? It's whistleblowing that I support, not WikiLeaks. But they're the only show in town at the moment, so I'm supporting them. But again, I find myself having to explain the reality of this situation to people that have jumped on a bandwagon to bash them over it. So please listen to what is being said, not who is saying it. Okay, so over the past several months, Daniel Domscheit-Berg, after having left WikiLeaks, has gone on a personal vendetta against Wikileaks and Julian Assange. We've already seen the dishonest things that he's done in terms of threatening to destroy materials. He was giving the location to download this file out to people in return for favours, in return for media coverage, in return for partnerships and help and assistance, basically, okay? So he was trying to impress people a lot of the time by giving out a secret location on a WikiLeaks server to get hold of this information. Right. Now, so in this whole situation, we can say that probably the only error really that Assange or WikiLeaks has made is to put this cable on there on a public server. It was in a secret location. You could only access it if you've been given the URL. But yeah, it was on a public server. So perhaps that is their mistake here. But Daniel Domscheit-Berg had been given the location away, basically giving this information, this massive file of 7 gigabits, this complete unredacted Cablegate file, to different people for the last several months, right? And then David Lee of The Guardian wrote a book in February. And in that book, he went into great detail about his interactions with Julian Assange. Now, in that book, David Lee gave the complete password to access that file, okay? It was actually the title of one of his chapters, and he wrote about this conversation he'd had with Assange where he told him the password. He printed the entire password to access this file of all of the unredacted cables, okay? Those two pieces of information have been out there in the public for several months, right? So the danger to those people named in those unredacted logs was already there, okay? It is malicious states and organized groups, you know, who are always actively seeking information on people that are working against them. That would be the risks to these people. So why, Landon, do you think it's a better idea for those entities to be secretly and quietly able to access that information without it being openly available to the public? The argument is there to be made that with that information open to everybody, then it's easier potentially to protect those people that are named. As you said yourself, there is a list that is being compiled with a tag of people that are potentially at risk from talking to diplomats. If that information is public, it can be argued that it's easier to protect those people. WikiLeaks tried to do this. They contacted the State Department recently, before they released these unredacted cables, to work with them to help warn these people that information was now out there as a result of the actions of Daniel Domscheit-Berg, a defector from WikiLeaks who had been using the information as a makeweight to impress people and get contacts, and David Lee, who had taken a crazy step of publishing the password for that file in his book. Now, those two people, I'm not saying those two people knew that putting those two things together would create the ability for this leak to occur. I'm not saying that. But these are two very, very careless actions by these two people. They're enemies now of WikiLeaks. And for no apparent reason. What reason is there really for David Lee to publish the real password that he was given to a highly sensitive trove of information, after having signed agreements as part of The Guardian to not to handle this information with secrecy? Until, safe and redacted. Why in his book could he not have used a fake password just to illustrate the point? No, he actually printed the real password. So with those two actions, that information was already out there, available to these malicious states and entities and groups that would have used that information to go after these people. So yes, the argument is there to put it all out in public, easy to protect those people. Now, so WikiLeaks released these unredacted cables on the 2nd of September. The story had already hit the media more than a week before that. On August the 25th in Der Freitag, the story published on last Friday, editor Stephen Kraft claimed to have found online a password-protected CSV file containing a 1.73 gigabyte cache of entirely unredacted diplomatic cables originating from WikiLeaks. According to Kraft, the password for the file is also easy to locate. Now, when these stories first started coming out, nobody wanted to report on the specifics of where that password was. Didn't want to be the one to drop the bomb, basically. Eventually that did come out. Now I'm going to link to a comprehensive timeline of events here written by somebody who was closely involved with the eventual kind of joining of the dots with this, okay? And it was there for anybody to do. So yeah, to say that WikiLeaks has just recklessly decided to just fling all these out into the open with disregard for safety is bollocks, Landon. You've missed out major parts of the story. Okay? I had a similar reaction to yours when I first heard about this. I made that video last night condemning what they do. It's not that simple. One of the most important sources that I wanted to get a handle on what their position was the Bradley Manning Support Network, and I'm just going to read out parts of their statement on what's happened here. They said that basically conversations that have been attributed to Bradley Manning suggest that the intent of releasing documents to Wikileaks was to allow journalists the ability to explore evidence of wrongdoing in order to stimulate reform and debate. Whomever provided these documents to Wikileaks would have expected the same sort of confidence as any source from the material to be handled with care. Regardless of whether a former Wikileaks staffer or a media partner was ultimately responsible for breaking this confidence, our focus remains on using this information to help level the playing field for those struggling against injustice around the world. So they're saying, yes, there's been carelessness here on everybody's part, really. Wikileaks probably shouldn't have put that link there on an open server and trusted people so brazenly with the passwords and the access to it. But the ultimate fault does lie Daniel Domscheit-Berg and David Lee. But they've said, regardless of all that, their focus remains on the intent of a whistleblower, which is to level the playing field for people fighting injustices around the world. So again, it's coming back to this fact that critics of WikiLeaks are completely ignoring the actual information that's coming out in those logs. One of the most recent and shocking ones is, and it's not a brand new story, but it's something that basically got buried before in the past, is this cable that details an Iraqi family, including children, that were assassinated, basically. And then later that this was covered up by an airstrike destroying the house. That's utterly disgusting and far more important to talk about, in my opinion. And of course, the long list of all the other revelations that we've seen. But these are all things that are glossed over. I also think there's a serious hypocrisy coming from the critics of WikiLeaks on this issue. We've heard it before, and we're hearing it now with regards to the unredacted cable releases, that this idea of potential harm coming to people. Okay, that this potentially innocent people could come to harm. Now, as someone who is anti-war, specifically the ones in the Middle East that have been basically immoral and wars of aggression, attacking, not defense, and all this kind of thing, as a critic of those wars, if I were to argue that there could be potential harm to innocents, and that would be a reason not to take part in these invasions, I would be laughed off of YouTube. Further than that, if after the wars had already started and there was, say, 1 or 2 innocent people killed as a result of these wars, I would again be laughed off of YouTube. Okay, but we're not at potential. We're not at 1 or 2. We are now already into the realms of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. If you go back to the first Gulf War in the Middle East entirely without operations there, it's estimated 1.5 million people have died already as a result of these invasions, okay? And you could say that the vast majority of those people are innocents, especially when you take into account the fact that we are the invaders. So of course forces are going to be fighting those foreign forces invading. But yeah, if I was to cite potential innocent deaths as a reason for not going into those wars, I would be laughed off of YouTube by these people. If I was to cite 1 or 2 actual innocent deaths, I would be laughed off of YouTube. We're already at the stage where we're still disregarded in our arguments when we're up to 1.5 million people already dead. And yet we're supposed to accept, as a legitimate argument to oppose WikiLeaks, that there could be potentially harm to innocents from the release of this information. There is a massive hypocrisy there. We get fed this argument of collateral damage and get fed this idea that that is acceptable to ever greater degrees. But with WikiLeaks, we're supposed to still accept this argument, and it's not even in the realms of actual statistics. It's still just a potential threat. But as I've explained as well, this potential threat, whilst real, comes from malicious states, malicious entities that would have already been able to access that information as a result of the actions of Daniel Domscheit-Berg and David Lee. Okay, so WikiLeaks was left in this position that they had to make a decision to either let those states access that information secretly and quietly, or to put it all out into the public, and then have the debate over whether those people would then be easier to protect. It's a difficult situation. Of course, I would prefer these cables to have been unredacted all the way. This was WikiLeaks' intent. I mean, the statement that they made prior to the release of the redacted cables, they said the embassy cables will be released in stages over the next year. The subject matter of these cables is of such importance and the geographical spread so broad that to do otherwise would not do this material justice. They've also said recently that revolutions and reforms are in danger of being lost as the unpublished cables spread to intelligence contractors and governments before the public. So there you see their initial intent on the importance of spreading out and redacting these cables, and the logic behind this release of all the unredacted cables. It is difficult to get your head around initially. I'm not surprised that people have had this knee-jerk reaction to it. It was quite shocking. I've seen a lot of Wikileaks supporters confused by it. I was confused by it. I'd ask you to look at what has actually happened here and not, who's making the arguments. It really doesn't matter. If we're critical thinkers on this website, we should be able to look past our allegiances, our personal regard for certain persons. We should be able to look at the facts of the arguments that are being presented. As I said, Federalist Films, thanks for your questions. I am going to make a separate video about that. I think it requires that. And that's all for this video. Bye-bye.